Every single minute, somewhere in the world, a child is being abused behind closed doors. We see the happy pictures on social media, the seemingly perfect families. But behind those carefully curated images, a silent tragedy can be unfolding. We often hear the statistics, the staggering numbers of children who are neglected, harmed, and even killed by those they should trust most. But rarely do we hear their individual stories. The stories that truly bring home the human cost of this epidemic. Today we break the silence and tell the story of one of those children, Koralynn Fister. A vibrant, innocent 2-year-old whose life was brutally stolen from her. Her case is a stark reminder that vigilance is our only weapon against the monsters that prey on the innocent. It's a reminder that we, as a society, have a responsibility to protect the most vulnerable among us. This isn't just a story about Koralynn. It's a call to action. It's a plea to open our eyes, to listen to our instincts, and to speak up when we suspect something is wrong. Because the next Koralynn may depend on it. Prepare yourself to hear the heartbreaking truth about a little girl who deserved so much more, and to consider what we can all do to ensure that no other child suffers the same fate. To truly understand the tragedy of Koralynn Fister, we need to know more about the people in her life. Let's start with Koralynn herself. Koralynn was just 2 years old, a happy, curious little girl who loved the simple things in life. She had the kind of laugh that could make anyone smile. She loved playing with her toys, splashing in the bathtub, and exploring the world around her. She was full of life and innocence, completely trusting of the people around her. She possessed both grace and gentle strength. But that trust made her vulnerable. She depended on the adults in her life to keep her safe. What set Koralynn apart was her resilience and intuitive nature. Even at a young age, she had an uncanny ability to sense the emotions of those around her. She exuded warmth and charm, naturally drawing people to her. Her mother, Becky Heupel, loved Koralynn and her older sister deeply but faced many challenges of her own. Becky struggled with chronic pain and mental health issues like panic attacks and obsessive-compulsive disorder. These struggles made it hard for her to manage everything on her own. She had been in a relationship with Koralynn's father, David Fister. But their relationship didn't last. It's unclear exactly why they broke up, but it may have been due to stress, financial problems, or other issues they couldn't overcome. After their breakup, Becky was left raising 2 young children on her own. She wanted to give them a stable home and a better life, but she was overwhelmed and looking for help. That's when James Reeder came into their lives. James Reeder seemed like the perfect partner at first. He moved in with Becky and started helping around the house. He acted like he cared about Becky and her daughters. But it was all an act. Behind his kind appearance was someone dangerous. Someone who would eventually hurt Koralynn in ways no one could imagine. Reeder used his charm to gain Becky's trust and control over her family. Over time he showed his true self, a man full of anger and cruelty. He created an environment where Koralynn wasn't safe anymore. Each person in this story played a role in what happened. Koralynn, who was so full of life, Becky, who wanted to do the right thing but made mistakes, and James Reeder, who hid his evil intentions behind a mask of kindness. This is their story, a story that reminds us how important it is to protect children from harm. Life in Centralia, Washington in the spring of 2012 may have seemed ordinary to an outsider. But behind the closed doors of a small, modest home, Becky Heupel was fighting a daily battle of survival. She lived with her 2 young daughters, Koralynn and her older sister, in a house that often felt too small for their struggles. Financially, things were always tight. Becky relied on a combination of government assistance and occasional odd jobs to make ends meet. The stress of managing bills, putting food on the table, and providing for her children weighed heavily on her. Emotionally, she was depleted. The chronic pain she endured, coupled with the panic attacks and obsessive-compulsive disorder, made even simple tasks feel overwhelming. Becky had always longed for a stable family life, but her relationships were often short-lived and tumultuous. After her separation from David Fister, the father of her children, she found herself feeling isolated and vulnerable. She wanted a partner, someone to share the burden of parenting, to offer emotional support, and to help her create a secure and loving home for her daughters. In March 2012, James M. Reeder re-entered Becky's life. They had reconnected on a dating website, and Reeder quickly presented himself as the answer to Becky's prayers. He seemed different from her past partners. More attentive, more helpful, and more eager to be a part of their lives. Reeder moved into Becky's home, bringing with him a sense of order and stability. He assisted with household chores, helped care for the children, and offered Becky emotional support, or so it seemed. He would help with meals, laundry, and even volunteered to take the girls to the park, giving Becky a much-needed break. But this facade of normalcy hid a sinister truth. James Reeder was not the caring partner he appeared to be. Behind the kind gestures and helpful words lurked a manipulative predator. He wanted control, and Koralynn was the most defenseless person in his path. Prosecutors would later argue that Reeder intentionally targeted Becky because of her vulnerabilities. He saw her as an easy mark, a single mother struggling with mental health issues and financial difficulties, someone desperate for affection and support. As the days turned into weeks, subtle changes began to occur. Reeder became more possessive of Becky, more critical of her parenting, and more controlling of her time. He started isolating her from her friends and family, convincing her that he was the only one she could trust. But what seemingly small red flags were missed? What did those close to Becky and James fail to notice? And what role did the community, her friends, and even her family members play in protecting her and her children? The answers to these questions are both heartbreaking and important to understanding the tragedy that was about to unfold. May 24, 2012, a date forever etched in the hearts of those who knew Koralynn. On this day, her short life came to a brutal end. It was a day that would change everything for her family and community. As the morning sun rose over Centralia, Washington, Koralynn was just beginning her day like any other toddler. She was playful and full of energy, but little did anyone know that this would be her last day. That morning, James Reeder was in the house with her. Becky Hoypel had left the room briefly to attend to something else, trusting Reeder to watch over her daughter. Reeder claimed that he found Koralynn face down in the bathtub after stepping away to get a towel. He said he had only been gone for a moment. When emergency responders arrived at the scene, they found Koralynn unresponsive. But what they discovered was shocking. Koralynn's body was cold and it showed signs of severe abuse. There were bruises all over her small body, cuts on her skin, and areas where the skin was missing entirely. Reeder's story seemed simple at first glance, a tragic accident in a moment of negligence. However, as investigators began to piece together what had happened, it became clear that the truth hidden beneath the surface was far more sinister. The scene wasn't just one of neglect. It was a brutal crime scene that told a story of violence and suffering. As the investigation continued, authorities began to uncover more details about Koralynn's life leading up to that fateful day. They learned about the abuse she had endured and how long it had been going on. The signs were there, but no one had seen them until it was too late. Then came the autopsy, the examination that would reveal the horrifying reality of Koralynn's death. The results painted a chilling picture of what had happened to her. The medical examiner ruled her cause of death as drowning and blunt force trauma. This wasn't an accident, it was murder. Koralynn hadn't just drowned in the bathtub. She had suffered extensive injuries before her tragic end. The evidence showed that she had been brutally beaten and abused. This revelation shattered any remaining doubts about Reeder's innocence and exposed the dark truth behind his actions. The community was left reeling from this news. How could someone do this to such an innocent child? How could Koralynn's life be taken so violently? As people tried to process their grief and anger, many questions remained unanswered. What did the autopsy reveal that shattered Reeder's story? How could someone who seemed so caring turn out to be capable of such cruelty? These questions lingered in the air, haunting those who loved Koralynn and those who were determined to seek justice for her. The day after Koralynn's death, on May 25, 2012, James Reeder was arrested. Initially, he had claimed that Koralynn had drowned while he was giving her a bath. But as investigators began to gather evidence, they quickly realized that the truth was far more disturbing. Reeder was held on probable cause for murder and child rape. The road to justice was fraught with legal complexities and emotional turmoil. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Koralynn had suffered greatly in the weeks leading up to her death. Evidence of abuse came to light, revealing that she had been subjected to horrific acts of violence. The community was in shock, struggling to comprehend how someone could harm such an innocent child. In the months that followed, the case against Reeder progressed through the legal system. In January 2013, he entered a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to charges of homicide by abuse, second-degree assault, and 2 counts of first-degree rape of a child. However, he did so through an Alford plea, which meant he acknowledged that a jury would likely convict him based on the evidence but did not admit any guilt himself. On March 6, 2013, James Reeder was sentenced to a minimum of 37.5 years to life in prison for his crimes. As he stood before the judge, there was a heavy silence in the courtroom. Many family members and friends of Koralynn were present, their hearts filled with grief and anger. Lewis County Superior Court Judge James Lawler delivered a powerful statement during sentencing. He expressed his deep sorrow for Koralynn and his frustration at the limits of the law. "I didn't hear, but I can imagine her screams and her cries as she was tortured by you," Judge Lawler said. "I wish I wasn't limited by the statute. I wish I wasn't limited by these charges." Despite this strong condemnation from the court, many wondered if justice had truly been served. Was a sentence of 37.5 years enough for the life he took? Would he ever truly face the consequences of his actions? As the dust settled from Reeder's sentencing, attention turned toward Koralynn's mother, Becky Heupel. She faced her own set of charges related to her daughter's death. In connection with Koralynn's abuse and neglect, Becky was ultimately sentenced to 1 year and 1 day for felony criminal mistreatment. But this raised an important question. Was Becky Heupel also a victim in this tragic story? She had struggled with mental health issues, chronic pain, panic attacks, and obsessive-compulsive disorder, which made it difficult for her to manage her responsibilities as a mother effectively. Many in the community questioned whether it was fair to prosecute a mother who was battling such significant challenges while trying to raise her children. As Becky sat in court next to David Fister, Koralynn's father, emotions ran high. David had expressed his deep sorrow over losing his daughter and called for justice that would reflect the gravity of what had happened. But could Becky be held accountable for failing to protect Koralynn when she herself was fighting her own demons? The courtroom buzzed with tension as these questions hung in the air. Advocates for victims spoke out about the need for understanding and support for parents facing mental health challenges while also emphasizing that children must always come first. As time passed, many wondered what would happen next in this heartbreaking saga. Would Becky receive help or further punishment? How would she cope with the loss of her daughter while also grappling with feelings of guilt? And what about James Reeder? Would he ever truly understand the pain he caused or show remorse for his actions? The community held its breath as they awaited answers to these pressing questions, questions that would linger long after Koralynn's story had been told. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the impact of Koralynn Fister's death rippled through her family and the entire community. The courtroom during James Reeder's sentencing hearing was filled with a heavy silence, punctuated only by the raw emotion of those who loved Koralynn. The pain and grief of Koralynn's family echoed throughout the room. Each statement delivered by family members was a testament to the love they had lost and the life that could have been. Koralynn's father, David Fister, spoke with a broken voice, expressing his deep sorrow over losing his daughter. He described Koralynn as a bright light in their lives, someone who brought joy and laughter to everyone around her. His words carried the weight of a father's heartbreak as he lamented the moments he would never get to share with her. Birthdays, milestones, and simple everyday joys. Koralynn's grandmother also took to the stand, her eyes filled with tears as she recounted memories of her granddaughter. She shared stories of Koralynn's infectious laughter and her love for playing outside. "She was so full of life," she said, "and it breaks my heart that she will never get to grow up." The anguish in her voice resonated with everyone present, reminding them all of the innocence that had been so brutally taken away. As family members shared their statements, it became clear that Koralynn was not just a victim, she was a beloved daughter, granddaughter, and niece. Each testimony painted a vivid picture of a little girl who deserved so much more than what she received in life. The courtroom was filled with tears as they expressed their anger and frustration at how someone could inflict such pain on an innocent child. The emotional responses from Koralynn's family were palpable. They were not only mourning her loss but also grappling with feelings of helplessness and betrayal. Many struggled to understand how they could have missed the signs of abuse or how they could have done more to protect her. Outside the courtroom, the public reaction was swift and intense. News outlets covered Koralynn's story extensively, bringing attention to the horrific circumstances surrounding her death. Headlines screamed for justice, while social media exploded with outrage over the abuse and failure to protect Koralynn. People from all walks of life expressed their anger and sorrow online, sharing their disbelief that such a tragedy could happen in their community. Community members organized vigils and memorials to honor Koralynn's memory. Flowers were laid at makeshift memorials adorned with pictures of her smiling face, each tribute a reminder of the vibrant life that had been cut short. People came together to support one another in their grief, united by a shared desire to ensure that no other child would suffer the same fate. In conversations across town, parents held their children a little closer, discussing ways to raise awareness about child abuse and improve communication within families. Schools began implementing programs focused on teaching children about safety and recognizing signs of abuse. The community rallied together, determined to create an environment where children could feel safe and protected. But amidst this wave of support came questions that lingered in many minds. How could this have happened? What systems had failed Koralynn? Many felt that there were warning signs that had been overlooked, red flags that should have alerted those around her to the danger she faced. As people shared their thoughts on social media platforms, discussions about mental health emerged as well. Many recognized that Becky Hoypel's struggles with chronic pain and mental health issues played a significant role in this tragedy. While some called for accountability for Becky's actions as a mother, others argued for compassion and understanding for someone battling such profound challenges. The community faced an ethical dilemma. Is it right to prosecute a mother who is struggling with mental health issues while trying to raise her kids? This question sparked heated debates among residents as they grappled with feelings of anger toward Becky while also recognizing her own suffering. As time passed, Koralynn's story became more than just a tragic headline. It became a catalyst for change within Centralia. The community vowed to honor her memory by advocating for stronger protections for children and better support systems for parents facing similar struggles. The echoes of grief transformed into calls for action. Action that would ensure no other child would endure what Koralynn did. Koralynn Fister's story is truly heartbreaking. But beyond the sadness, there are important lessons we can learn to help prevent similar tragedies in the future. Now let's turn to you. This story raises many important questions and your thoughts matter. First, what do you think could have been done differently to prevent Koralynn's death? As we look back at the events leading up to that tragic day, we can see moments where things might have changed. Was there a time when someone, a family member, a friend, or even a neighbor, could have noticed the signs of trouble and taken action? Maybe if Becky Hoypel had received more support for her mental health issues, she could have better protected her children. Or if people had paid closer attention to James Reeder's behavior with Koralynn, they might have detected the abuse sooner. It's easy to say what should have happened after the fact, but the real challenge is figuring out how we can make things better in the future. So, what do you think we can do as a community to better protect children from abuse? Think about schools and community centers. Are they doing enough to notice and respond to signs of abuse? Are there resources available for families who are struggling? Now let's talk about social services. What role do you think these agencies should play in situations like Koralynn's? Should social workers have been more involved in checking on the family? How can we make sure that child protective services have the tools and training they need to keep children safe? These questions are not easy to answer, but they are very important. We need to think about them if we want to stop tragedies like Koralynn's from happening again. Another big issue is domestic violence. How can we raise awareness about domestic violence and how it affects children? Domestic violence often happens behind closed doors, making it hard to see. But children who witness domestic violence are at a higher risk of being abused themselves. So, what can we do to help break this cycle of violence and protect children? One important step is to teach people about the warning signs of domestic violence. This includes things like controlling behavior or emotional abuse. By helping people recognize these signs, we can empower them to take action when someone is in danger. Social services are designed to step in when children are at risk, but in cases like this, they often arrive too late, or not at all. What role can you play? What steps can communities take to recognize and intervene in cases of suspected child abuse? And how can we ensure that social service agencies and healthcare providers have the resources they need to protect vulnerable children? According to research from organizations like Prevent Child Abuse America and the CDC, there are concrete steps that individuals and communities can take to prevent child abuse. These include promoting safe, stable, and nurturing relationships. This includes creating supportive communities for families, providing parenting education, and promoting positive discipline techniques. Addressing economic hardship. Poverty and financial stress can increase the risk of child abuse. Communities can support families by providing access to affordable housing, job training, and childcare services. Strengthening access to services. It is essential to ensure that families have access to high-quality mental health care, substance abuse treatment, and domestic violence services. We also need to support organizations that help victims of domestic violence. These groups provide shelter, counseling, and other resources that can help victims escape dangerous situations and rebuild their lives. By supporting these organizations, we can help create safer communities for everyone. In the end, protecting children from harm requires everyone working together: families, communities, and social services. We need to ask tough questions and commit ourselves to creating a world where every child can grow up safe and loved. So, what do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments below. By talking about these issues together, we can work toward a future where no child has to suffer like Koralynn did. Koralynn Fister's story is a stark reminder of the vulnerabilities of children and the importance of community vigilance. Her life was tragically cut short by someone who was supposed to care for her. The pain and loss felt by her family and community are deep and lasting. As we reflect on what happened, it becomes clear that we must do better to protect those who cannot protect themselves. In the days following Koralynn's death, many questions arose about how this tragedy could have been prevented. The signs of abuse were there, but they went unnoticed by those who could have intervened. This highlights a critical issue. We need to be more aware of the children around us. It is essential for parents, neighbors, teachers, and friends to look out for signs of trouble. If something feels off, it's important to speak up and seek help. Koralynn's case also raises important questions about the role of social services. These agencies are meant to protect children, but they often face challenges that prevent them from doing their jobs effectively. It is vital for social workers to have the resources and training they need to recognize abuse and take action when necessary. We must advocate for stronger systems that prioritize child safety. Moreover, we need to address the issue of domestic violence in our communities. Many children suffer in silence because they live in homes where violence is present. Raising awareness about domestic violence and its impact on children is crucial. We need to educate ourselves and others about what domestic violence looks like and how it can affect families. As we think about Koralynn's story, let's not forget that her life mattered. She was a little girl with dreams and hopes, taken too soon by an act of unimaginable cruelty. Her memory should inspire us to take action, to ensure that every child has a safe place to grow up. Now, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments section below. What do you think could have been done differently? How can we work together as a community to protect children? Your insights are valuable as we continue this important conversation. If you found this story meaningful, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to this channel for more stories like Koralynn's. Together we can raise awareness and advocate for change. Let Koralynn's memory be a catalyst for change. Together we can create a world where every child is safe, loved, and protected. Thank you for watching.